Okay, let's be honest. How are you at acknowledging your mistakes? What's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. As some of you know, I've been doing this carnivore way of eating consistently for a year and a half. I've been doing the lion diet on and off in that year and a half with a fitness challenge on and off I've been doing. Now I am going to be consistent with my fitness challenge from this point on. This time on the lion diet, I'm 2.5 months in, and I forgot to mention in my last video, I did cheat on my lion diet last week because I made all that sausage last week in Capicolo and I had to taste test the sausage. So it came out pretty good. Only I know what the flavor is supposed to taste like. So I had to taste test it and I had some left over and my friend helped me make some of the sausage. So we had some at the end. So I did cheat on my lion diet, but I cheated with a carnivore diet. So, it's like going from like a 10 down to a 9. Now, because I ended up running short on time, my friend and I just cooked some of that sausage up afterwards. It was easier than cooking anything else. And I really wanted to thank him for coming over and helping me, and he had to rush off to work and I had to rush off to work. So we had that cooking while we were doing the sausage. It got me thinking about how I used to really cheat often when I started doing a zero carb way of eating. When I was eating that way, I did it consistently for the first year. I didn't cheat, not a lick, taste, or bite. And I don't cheat now with a lick, taste, or bite with carnivore. I have had a couple slip-ups on my lion diet in this 3-month challenge, one of which was that sausage I just mentioned. And once about a month ago or so, I had a little bit of bacon. But I do remember when I started doing this way of eating, when I got back into having carbohydrates and sugar, I made a conscious decision to start judiciously adding some back in my diet. I lost 150 pounds eating that way, and when I ended up reintroducing sugar back into my diet, it was such a slippery slope for me. I ended up cheating really bad, and I put on probably about half to 2/3 of the weight that I had lost. So I got up to about 400 pounds after that. I originally started at about 465 or so, so I put on quite a bit of that weight. Now, it wasn't in vain, though, because I learned from that. And I was having sugar once a week. For a month, I did it once a week. And then for the second month, I did it twice a week, very small portions. And on the third month, I tried it 3 times a week. And boy, did I just fall off the wagon. I just started having it all the time. My portion sizes got really bad. And I had a hard time sticking to it from that point on for quite a few years. So that was in the end of 2014, I started doing all that. So it was probably January 2015 where it became that slippery slope. And all the way through that, I had a lot of slips and I ended up putting all that weight back on. I had a major heart attack. I still didn't get back on track. I had all sorts of health problems. My gout was really flaring up on a regular basis. And that did complicate it because every time I was trying to lose weight, it wasn't just difficult to stick with a carnivore or a zero carb way of eating at the time because I didn't know carnivore existed at that time. But I was doing this zero carb way of eating so I could still have aspartame, so I had some gum. I might have the odd pop here or there, but for the most part, I was battling sugar addiction, and whenever I started to lose weight, I was getting these gout attacks. Now, I eventually figured that out, and it helped me to just be more consistent with only one battlefront instead of fighting a battle on 2 different fronts. So I only had to deal with my sugar addiction at that point, once I figured out my gout problem. But every time I went back to cheating, every time I tried it for a week or a month or 3 months or 6 months, every time I did that, I made a mistake and I slipped for one reason or another. And I have to admit, I'm one of those guys that I'll really meditate on what happened, how I got there, and what I could do differently. And sometimes I kept making the same mistakes over and over again just because it was weakness. And other times it was because I was in situations that weren't optimal to help me understand what I needed to prevent myself from cheating. So what it comes down to is learning from your mistakes. I learned a valuable lesson, and it took me till 2021 to learn this, almost exactly 6 years later, that I can't treat myself. I can't have a lick, taste, or bite of something that's not carnivore because I will cheat. It's just my nature. It's how I battle my sugar and carbohydrate addiction. So I am an abstainer, not a moderator. I've learned that about myself. I tried moderating for years and I couldn't. Every time it was like holding my breath underwater. I think one of the key things you can learn from yourself from the series of mistakes you might have made to this point that got you here is, am I an abstainer or a moderator? Are you going to get to the point where if you are an abstainer that you're going to try to embrace that? Or are you going to keep trying to moderate? Or you give yourself a day, week, or month where you're going to try and just balance this stuff. I do know a couple carnivores who can moderate really well. They're carnivores, and every now and then they would have a treat and it didn't really faze them, and they wouldn't go back and feel like they fell off the wagon. They just go right back to their next meal like they didn't skip a beat, because they weren't dealing with a sugar or carbohydrate addiction. But if you are dealing with a sugar or carbohydrate addiction, carnivore is going to be a difficult step for you to take, and you have to be honest with yourself. And it took me to be honest with myself to realize how far gone I had gotten, but also that I was an abstainer and I couldn't dodge that. I tried lots of different ways to moderate, and it just didn't work. So one of the first things you have to do is acknowledge your mistake. When you do that, admit it as soon as possible to yourself, and it's easy to give into temptations. Otherwise, everyone would be doing this way of eating, and there wouldn't be websites and Facebook groups and all these different channels and Instagram posts of people trying this and constantly trying it. Carnivore eating in the beginning can be a difficult thing to do because you're fighting a sugar or carbohydrate addiction. So being honest with yourself, and if you need to, outright apologize for yourself. Make it verbal, write it down, do what you need to do to acknowledge your mistakes. And if you have to keep a logbook, maybe that's not such a bad idea. Nobody goes from one point to the other and at the end just stands there on top of a mountain and says, I did it my first attempt and I was perfect at it all the way through. Everybody made mistakes until they got really good. I made mistakes for years. Now, it's been a year and a half consistently that I've been doing really well with it. And I have no reason to think I'm going to stop anytime soon. I would rather starve than go back and have something that I'm not supposed to eat. Not because I'm trying to be dogmatic about it, because I can't manage portion sizes and frequency when it comes to carbohydrates. I'm just not good at it. One of the first things you have to do is admit it. Admit it to yourself. Admit your mistake. You know you made a mistake, but don't make excuses for your mistake. Admit what you did and try not put yourself in that position again. So part of not putting yourself in that position again is analyzing what led up to that. Were you in a situation where maybe you're at somebody's house, or you went out to a restaurant, or maybe you were really hungry, or maybe you forgot to bring food to work? Don't set yourself up for disasters. Don't set yourself up for mistakes. Put yourself in a position where you're helping your future self. Have meals prepared. Bring your own dish when you go to someone's house. Just explain to them you're on a strict elimination diet temporarily, if that's what you need to say, so that you don't get too much blowback from it, and just give it a shot and give yourself permission to inconvenience other people because you're putting yourself first and you're putting your health first. And give yourself permission to inconvenience other people because you're putting yourself first and you're putting your health first. And give yourself permission to inconvenience other people because you're putting yourself first and you're putting your health first. It's all about making that promise to yourself and learning not only to fulfill that promise, but not sabotage yourself. If you can, get feedback. There's lots of people on social media groups that are more than willing to give you their feedback, whether you ask for it or not. And it's a good thing to learn from your mistakes through the perspective of other people. So it doesn't hurt to throw it out there and say, look, this is what I did. Does anyone have any tips or suggestions? Maybe it's something you're not dealing with pretty well. You've learned and you've acknowledged that that's a mistake you keep making, but you don't know how to get out of that habit or rut. So that's where other people's feedback might be able to help, where you can implement some new strategies or techniques to prevent yourself from going down a bad path. Finding lessons is another thing. Always stop and think about what you learned from that. Nobody takes that straight line from beginner to professional. Everybody goes in this jagged dotted line across the way from one end to the other, from the start point all the way across. Nobody does a perfect arc. People turn around and they start here, and then they go here, and then they go here, they go here, they go here, here. And the next thing you know, that line gets more refined and it starts to look straighter as you go along. That's what you got to keep in mind as you're learning this process. Some people, and good for you if you were able to do it, can just start doing carnivore or zero carb and it's no big deal. But other people, it's not as easy. And so you need to analyze these problems and analyze these steps. Learn what got you in those positions to begin with. And the next step is to make a plan to apply those lessons. Look at what your mistake was. Let's go with, say, not having food at work. Well, maybe you can start keeping some food at work, some backup food, whether it's snacks or whether it's just something you can keep at the fridge at work, so that if you forget your food one day for some reason, by the door or in your own fridge, you have a backup plan. Backup plans are a really good way to go. Another thing, and I find this helpful, is teaching what you've learned. I've been doing this for a while, and it encourages me and strengthens me when I can help other people. So when you're going through your struggles, remember, there's lots of groups out there that really need your help. And the more you contribute to those groups, the more cemented you're going to feel in your own convictions and your own belief system and what you're doing. And you're going to start feeling better about yourself. Helping other people. It's such a great way to go, isn't it? Helping other people is helping you in the process. So I want you to keep that in mind. Helping other people helps you. After a while, reflect on your progress. When I was a kid and I started drawing, and I got pretty talented at drawing, I wanted to be a professional artist. I got to the point where I would draw something and I would look at it and think, that's my best drawing I've done yet. 6 months later, after looking at it over and over and over again, I would look at it and go, oh, there's a mistake here, there's a mistake there, oh, there's another mistake there. I would basically look at all these mistakes I made and I would try and analyze them. And I would look at some of my newer drawings and I look at the progress of where I was now and I think, wow, like I've gotten so much better just in the time frame of 4 or 6 months. So it's good to not so much pat yourself on the back, but look back and acknowledge where you were compared to where you are. If you're not writing any of this down, well, it's going to be kind of hard for you to remember sometimes. Make a personal journal about what it was like that first day and then the first week. Make a journal about what you're doing and look at these progress steps you've made. And then you'll start noticing all the benefits when you read back, when you're in month 3 and you look back at how difficult month 2 was. And now you're thinking, wow, that's not even a struggle anymore. This has been so much easier. Some people forget some of the things that they once went through. We have a knack for not remembering pain like we used to. Think about that. If you've ever broken a limb, you remember breaking the limb, you remember what led you to break the limb, but you don't remember the pain so much. You remember being in pain, but you don't remember and feel that pain like you did. It's kind of interesting. It's a natural mechanism our bodies have. We just don't remember pain, not like it was when we had it. And if you've ever gone through intense pain, you know what I'm talking about. You can remember having it, but you can't recreate that on the spot, that memory of that intensity. I think one of the biggest things you can do at this point is keeping a learning mindset. So after all that's done, always ask yourself, what else can I learn? No one has mastered this. Nobody. There are just more experienced people than others out there. No matter how far along you are, there's some people who have been doing it better, longer, and they've come across the problems you've come across maybe multiple times more. And maybe every now and then they're going to come across your problem and think, I've never ever heard of that before. You're going to have to keep searching. Some people may have faced some of those problems in the first little while of their carnivore journey. Other people, maybe it took years. But unless you keep learning about what happened to you and how you got to where you are and what else you're going to learn in the future, you're never going to know which direction you're going in. And you want to always make sure you're moving forward with something like this. It's nice when you get to a point where you can sort of coast and you put all that legwork in, like rowing a boat, and you put all that work in the first few months of rowing a boat. And now you're at a point where the tide has you and you can just carry along with this. And hopefully you won't make any more mistakes. But if you do, learn from them. Probably the biggest thing I learned was when I decided to allow myself to have sugar once a week, and then twice a week, and then 3 times a week. And I thought I could manage it because for the first 2 months of that, I was great with it. I didn't crave it. I was satisfied with the small portions I was having. And I was like, I think I finally beat this. So I wouldn't call it overconfidence that brought me back to it, but I didn't realize how slippery of a slope it was. And once I fell down that slope, I learned a valuable lesson that if I can ever get to the point where I can keep it consistently out, to not go back to thinking that I can manage it again. It was a hard lesson to learn. It was a long lesson to learn, but I got there. So I want you to keep these things in mind and see how you can better yourself. If you're still struggling with certain foods every now and then, if you're still struggling with certain habits every now and then, this video is for you. If you know people who are still struggling with this, keep them in mind. Help other people. Spread the word. Let people see how far you've gotten, and then it will encourage others to do the same. So I'm still going through my weight loss journey. I've lost 150 pounds doing this carnivore way of eating, and I still have about another 80 to go. This is still my journey. I have a lot of years under my belt with it, on and off, and very consistently for the last 1.5 years, and it's nice that I don't have really any temptations anymore. So it was nice getting to this point, and I want you to leave a comment if you can about what's helped you. So if you can, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel, and I hope you do really well with this. Keep moving forward, keep helping yourself, and help others in the process. Thanks a lot and take care.